It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
So many times I've been told by far too many that the wider horizon isn't nearly as bad as we've been led to believe by matrix media and official sources. How I wish such a conclusion had any basis whatsoever in reality. It doesn't. Because in fact, what's unfolding is far worse than any scenario that matrix media has or will disclose to populations, lest they panic before the controllers are ready to crawl into their underground bunkers. Those that still don't believe this will soon. Wait and see. If we don't fully face the fury of the bad news, we will have no chance of altering the current course, which absolutely must be accomplished if anyone is to make it through what's already unfolding. Let's get started. From Newsweek, millions warned to stay out of the sun for 3 days. It's not the first time they've given this warning, but it keeps coming. AccuWeather's meteorologists are warning millions of Americans across the central U.S. of an incoming heat wave that will cause temperatures to surge as much as 20 degrees above average later this week. Keep in mind, average, so-called average, is an ever more recent bracket of temperatures, which is ever more higher than the true pre-industrial baseline. So the bar keeps getting raised higher and higher and higher, which masks the true severity of heat that's unfolding. They say to avoid heat-related illnesses, people in the most significantly impacted areas are urged to stay out of the sun. It's not just the heat. It's the UV radiation. We are getting UVC on the surface now. That's a DNA-damaging spectrum of UV radiation. It's killing plankton, it's killing insects, it's causing cancer in humans, it's burning the cambium layer off of trees, scorching foliage, and this is not being disclosed. It's being systematically hidden. The UV warning readings are far short of how bad it actually is, because official metering only goes down to 300 nanometers, which is half the UVB spectrum and none of the UVC spectrum. Can't report what you're not even metering for, can you? But Geoengineeringwatch.org has metered with perhaps the most qualified metering specialist on the planet, former NASA contract engineer, recently deceased. But if you really want to know how bad the ozone threat is, it's a near-term existential threat. And in spite of all the threats we face, this should be considered. And by the way, climate engineering is the single biggest factor destroying the ozone layer. Let's make sure we mention that. This factor alone, is likely the most near-term existential threat of all. And that's saying a lot. If you want to know more, if you want to know how bad it is, if you want to see actual graphs of the metering, go to geoengineeringwatch.org under the ozone destruction section and listen to my exchanges with this former NASA contract engineer to better understand the issue. Yes, the sun feels incredibly hot on your skin and on surfaces, because it is, because UV radiation is bombarding the planet, and that's not included in any of the heat index models either. By design, mask the true severity of what's unfolding to the last possible moment to keep the public from panicking. That's exactly what's happening. Millions warned to stay out of the sun for 3 days, from Newsweek and many other sources as well. Let's add this from phys.org. Aged dust particles act as, quote, chemical reactors in the sky to drive air pollution, study finds. They say dust particles thrown up from deserts, such as the Sahara and Gobi, are playing a previously unknown role in air pollution. Dust can act like a sponge and a reactor, absorbing gaseous pollutants and transforming them into particles that affect our health and climate. Pay no attention to the fleets of jet tankers dispersing nanoparticles in the skies, 40 to 60 million tons annually. Pay no attention to that. Just some dust blowing across the Atlantic from the Sahara. Mind-numbing. Mind-numbing how completely and totally so-called academia and so-called media sources like this have betrayed not just the human race, but the entire web of life. The report continues. It says Earth's natural dust storms. They want to always throw those words in, natural too, so that we don't relate this to the completely unnatural geoengineering jet spray dispersions above our heads. They say the natural dust storms have a far more complex and impactful role in our air quality than previously known. And again, never mind the 40 to 60 million tons of nanoparticles that are all a part of this mix. They say air pollution from fine particles, which is what we're talking about there, is linked to millions, I would say tens of millions at minimum, of premature deaths annually and contributes to climate change, climate collapse. Understanding how and where the report says these particles come from helps to improve forecasts, guide pollution controls, and ultimately protect human health. They have no interest in protecting your health. Keep that in mind. You have all the global elite stating emphatically over decades their desperate desire to thin the herd down to about 500 million. That's a big drop. Drop of over 7.5 billion. You think you're included in their plans? Think again. From MSN, toxic airborne pollutants detected in U.S. atmosphere for the first time. Are we breathing it? Question mark. This is just a new form of pollution because we already have peer-reviewed study to prove that PFAS forever chemicals are everywhere in everything, every breath we take, every drop of rain, but this is new. Medium chain chlorinated paraffins, that's MCCPs, toxic chemicals that had never been detected in the Western Hemisphere before. These pollutants previously identified in distant areas like Antarctica are now raising concerns about their presence in the air we breathe. What are they doing in Antarctica? In the polar regions. That's where climate engineering was first initially deployed immediately after World War II. And how many people think that it's normal for the polar regions to have these featureless skies? It's not normal. It's total blanket, quote, solar radiation management, short-term toxic cooldowns at the cost of an even worse planetary meltdown. And we accept those skies as normal. They're not normal. We have all been the subjects of a climate engineering Manhattan project for 80 plus years. And even now today, we have the so-called climate science community and so-called media pretending that someday if things get bad enough, we might have to put jets in the sky to spray particulates, which will turn the sky a filthy, dirty white with trails everywhere. Oh, exactly like we see. Yeah, just like that. But we're not seeing what we're seeing, are we? Next, ongoing coverage of another aspect of the looming extremely near-term planetary omnicide scenario we collectively face from ABC News. The world's shrinking cloud cover is driving record temperatures, new research finds. Again, ongoing story, getting worse with each passing week. The new findings could even help, the report says, explain one of the big climate mysteries of the past couple of years. What big mysteries are they speaking about? Follow me through with this. The years 2023 and 2024 saw global average temperatures reach record highs, each becoming the hottest year on record. And by a long way, the report states, the shrinking of highly reflective clouds is much, much larger. It's at least 3 or 4 times the influence of the other effects that have been put forward. Stop and think about that. How long, on how many broadcasts, over how many years have I stated climate engineering operations, these sprayed, filthy particulate canopies, are diminishing the planet's natural cloud cover. They're destroying the planet's natural cloud-making processes in exchange for a toxic particulate cloud that can be manipulated with extremely powerful frequency transmissions from ground-based transmitters. Again, this is the fast track to near-term planetary omnicide as the planet loses its albedo, its reflectivity from naturally nucleated clouds. We're done. Venus syndrome. And that is exactly where we're headed. And those in power are too committed to turn back. All of the corporations that are profiting off these insane weather warfare operations are too invested to turn back. They will continue to put the pedal to the metal until the moment of impact, and that draws perilously near. It's time for everybody to pay attention to these particular building blocks of the issue of the breakdown of the planet's primary life support systems. And if we do not stand together, stand up, make our voices heard, and bring to attention exactly where we're headed and exactly how fast to all those participating in this insanity, like our military brothers and sisters, their families, the families of defense industry contractors, all of those that are, quote, just doing their jobs, which will lead to near-term human extinction. How near-term? Centuries out? Decades out? No. The current trajectory is few, if any, will make the end of this decade. If you believe that's impossible, in the coming weeks and months, you won't. And that's not even taking into account nuclear everything. That's not even considering that factor. We have destroyed the planet. The planet is broken right now. And every single day, climate engineering is allowed to continue and allowed to prevent the planet from responding to the damage already done, pounds more nails into our collective coffins. From the UK Independent, millions brace for powerful heat dome set to engulf much of America. Millions across the United States are bracing for a dramatic start to summer this week as a powerful, quote, heat dome is set to engulf vast swaths of the country, bringing with it stifling temperatures and oppressive humidity. Ionosphere heater-induced heat dome. This is how insane those in power are. They have these weapons of mass destruction like ionosphere heaters, HAARP being an example. There's about 100 around the globe, many different designs. HAARP is the biggest of the bunch. These are weapons of mass destruction that cause an electrical chain reaction in the electrically charged ionosphere, superheating those layers of the atmosphere, expanding the atmosphere up and down. The downward push is a high-pressure heat dome. They use this to manipulate upper-level wind currents, and they're flip-flopping the pendulum of bake and cool down, chemical cool down from the west coast to the east coast and back again, back and forth, back and forth. They've been doing this for so very long. Please search geoengineeringwatch.org. Geoengineering is creating freeze-fry extremes. Please search that, view that, and keep in mind how long that video has existed and how accurate it is today. More than ever before, this is exactly what they're doing. So the West, Pacific Northwest, has been baking in record temperatures. And by the way, when they take record hot temperatures over a specific geographic region, they'll take maybe a dozen compared to if they do a chemical cool down over the same scale of region, same amount of real estate covered. They'll take hundreds of cold temperature records, which skews people's perception on the true state of the climate. Oh, look, there was hundreds of cold records set with these chemical cool down. And by the way, it's about to snow in Montana. I'll get to that. Snow in Montana while we have record-breaking temperatures, heat alerts in Alaska, and it's going to snow in Montana. That's a chemical cool down to the core. But bottom line is, heat dome. That is not a natural event. I'm not saying the planet's not superheating. It is, but this is the extreme of that, and it is not natural. It is a weapon of climate engineering. Let's keep moving from the Weather Channel. Northeast Midwest heat wave could smash dozens of records. There's my point again, dozens. Over that massive an area, if it was a chemical cold down, they would report hundreds of records, not just dozens. Part of how they skew the public's perception. Let's add this. From SierraClub.com, I just have to put this in there. The climate crisis is an economy-wide threat. Investors must treat it that way. Let me finish their statement, then I'll get to what a criminal, hypocritical organization the Sierra Club is, and so many so-called environmental groups like them that systematically deny climate engineering because they don't want to risk their 501c3 nonprofit. Absolute criminal hypocrisy. Sierra Club states, why hasn't the investment world responded more decisively? Question mark. Then they say, if you care about action on climate change or protecting your retirement savings, you should care about how our investment system works too. Let's make this clear. Economic everything means exactly nothing on a dead planet. Sierra Club is clueless. I've met with their top leaders from Northern California, and they were the most head in the sand, willfully eyes wide shut. Don't bother me with anything I don't want to hear. They're total hypocrites. They deserve not a cent from anyone. And for them to even insinuate that retirement savings mean nothing, I've spent all of mine. Before I ever even started this battle, some 20 years ago, I was comfortably retired. A lot of Habitat real estate holdings, a large SEP IRA account. I have spent all of that in this fight because I will not need it where we are heading. I want to know when I reach the end of the line for me, when I take my last breath, that I did everything in my power to make a difference for the better, that I played every single card I had. And we have this so-called Sierra Club pretending that there's some sort of investment opportunities in a collapsing climate system, the planet's collapsing life support systems. I had to bring this article to light as an example of the criminal hypocrisy across the board in all the major environmental groups. Criminal hypocrisy. About the Canada incineration so far, and this is directly related to climate engineering, by the way. If you search the engineering wildfire section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org, please go there and search engineering wildfires, engineering droughts, engineering winter. Learn about this issue. Don't just propagate what any site, any source that wants to gain clicks from climate engineering. They know nothing about the issue, but if they say something, half the activist community starts to propagate it. Don't do that. That's not helping the cause. Learn the actual building block, verifiable facts of the issue. Share that. So again, homepage geoengineeringwatch.org, engineering drought, engineering winter, engineering wildfires, which is what I was getting to. Single greatest factor with the incinerations is climate engineering. Not speaking about the source of ignition, separate subject. Those in power can play any moron with a match to go out and start some fires. I'm talking about what is setting the conditions for these fires to burn with such ferocity. That's climate engineering. How much is burnt in Canada so far? About 15,000 square miles. Not acres, 15,000 square miles. That's a little over, I think, 10 million acres. 10 million acres. Fire season is just getting started. Record high temperatures have been all over Canada, including into the polar regions. And with all that in mind, let's add this. From MSN, rare June winter storm to hit with 12 inches of snow. And I didn't make that up. Listen to this. The storm, which is set to begin Saturday afternoon and last through Sunday morning, is expected to produce significant snowfall. The abrupt contrast between extreme heat elsewhere in the country and an unseasonable snow event in the Northern Rockies highlights the growing unpredictability of seasonal weather patterns in the U.S. That's called climate engineering by the world's largest military over a population that they desperately want to keep confused and divided as to the true state of damage done to the climate until the brutal, bitter end, until the moment of impact. So they've kept, over the last 13 years, the eastern half of the U.S. lower 48 most consistently chemically cooled compared to the entire rest of the world. It's the most anomalously less warm region in the entire world. That's not nature. It's climate engineering by the largest military in the world that doesn't give a damn about what kind of toxins it dumps on its own population because too many soldiers are doing what they're told without questioning what they're doing, and that has to change. And now they're swinging the pendulum back. They're chemically nucleating an inflow of moisture that's being manipulated into the Pacific Northwest where it's been record highs for a very long time, and now they're radically cooling it down. Massive weather whiplash, snow in Montana, while it's absolutely burning up elsewhere with heat index temperatures that are way into triple digits, and you need to measure your heat index by yourself. Don't trust official heat index readings. Take the ground ambient temperature where you're at, get a humidity meter, check the humidity, and search heat index calculator online, plug those two numbers in and get your own heat index. It's likely much higher than you know. Heat indexes in other parts of the Northern Hemisphere are already this year, even before summer, in the 150 plus range. 150 plus heat index. It's coming here. When this military can't continue to chemically cool its population, making them sicker and dumber by the day, and doing so, the temperatures are going to go through the roof because the planet's in total meltdown, and climate engineering has prevented the planet from responding to the other sources of damage done for so many decades. Do we have any chance left now? Doesn't look good. From MSN, supply of popular fruit plummets as severe frost devastates crops. This is another example of chemical ice nucleation. They say catastrophic losses. This is across the pond in Turkey, but they say a severe frost in Turkey has disrupted the global apricot market. 85% of Turkey's apricots suffered catastrophic losses. This is not nature. You don't have these flash chemical freezes on a planet in total meltdown. That's chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. These are patented processes. Same as your ice pack on your shelf can sit there 20 years, room temperature, you mix those chemicals together, you have ice instantly. It's called an endothermic reaction. They're doing that in the clouds. They don't care about the damage done on the surface, the toxification of everything contaminated. They don't care. They, those in power, the money printers, we all have a good idea of where those circles are, will do anything to maintain their hegemonic power till the brutal bitter end. And so many times from so many people I hear, no, can't be true. They, the money printers, wouldn't do this to themselves. They already have. In how many ways? How historically indisputable is that? Yet for so many that is used as their excuse for denial to walk away and pretend everything's fine until they hit the wall at full velocity, and that's coming. You can quote me on that. That's coming at blinding speed. From pilotonline.com, the insect apocalypse is driving bird declines. Of course, this is an ongoing story. Not new to report on it, but it's now being reported by many other sources because you can't hide it anymore. They say initially the blame for this insect apocalypse was placed on new generations of more lethal pesticides, habitat destruction for housing and agriculture, and pollution. But, the report says, recently it has become clear that the insects are drastically declining in even the remotest places on Earth. Imagine that. Exactly like Geoengineering.org has reported from day one, where none of these factors are at play. The culprit is change in temperature and rainfall patterns. Insects are very sensitive to drying out, and their breeding is closely tied to seasonal cycles, so even slight changes in temperature and rainfall will devastate them. This is a report of total deception by omission. Are these factors a part of the equation? Yes, but not nearly as big a factor like being exposed to highly toxic nanoparticle pollution from climate engineering. Search bees/aluminum. You'll find peer-reviewed study that bees are dying of massive aluminum exposure even thousands of miles away from industry or any other form of that exposure except falling out of the sky. Aluminum nanoparticles are a primary element named in climate engineering patents because of its high reflectivity. That's the stated goal of solar radiation management, block some of the sun with reflective particles. They don't care about the consequences. The bees are dying of symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being. They can't even find their way back to the hive. And all of this omitted from this report and so many others. Total control of media, of science. That's what the money printers have, and militaries. Total control of all of it. So if you're waving your flag for the power structure and their bombing of countries around the world and all the excuses they give to do so, and yet you're against them spraying you like a rat, does that make sense? Does that make any sense at all? Supporting them with one hand and claiming to be against them on the other hand. Same power structure. I don't care what the political stripe is. That's all theater. How obvious is that at this point? And they try to make every new chapter of that theater more convincing than the last. At this time, it's different. No, it's not. Occupants of the White House are puppets on the end of strings. I don't care what political stripe they wear. From phys.org, as UN climate talks loom, Brazil's Amazon forest loses in May an area larger than New York City. Lungs of the planet, done. They're done. And aside from what was just lost, the forest that's still standing is now a carbon source, not a carbon sink, because of a factor called VPD, vapor pressure deficit. Don't know any other source that's tried to disclose that except geoengineeringwatch.org. Means that climate engineering has so disrupted the global hydrological cycle and the desiccant particles, a part of that equation, that the stomata on foliage of forests and crops shut. That's the respiratory ports. They don't breathe. They don't absorb carbon. They don't release oxygen. Total shutdown. And that's happening across the board. All the planet's life support systems are being completely thwarted by climate engineering. I'm not denying all the other sources of damage to the planet. 100 million plus barrels of hydrocarbon a day being incinerated, 26 million tons of coal. We're cutting down the forests. We're paving the planet, poisoning the oceans. All of that is a big, big problem. But climate engineering, on top of all that, even bigger problem. Disabling the planet's ability to respond in any way, shape, or form to the damage done. Let's keep going. From ScienceAlert.com, volcanic eruptions can create ice in the sky, and we finally know how. Listen to this. Volcanic ash particles can trigger the formation of wispy cirrus clouds, like the kind you see out of the geoengineering jets all the time, in the atmosphere by providing a nucleus that ice particles can glom onto, a process known as ice nucleation. Wow. What a revelation. Newsflash. The weather terrorists have fully understood these processes for decades. Welcome to chemical ice nucleation for weather modification, which not only initiates the ice nucleation process at far above normal temperatures in clouds, chemical ice nucleation operations are the core factor that is creating the catastrophic hailstorms all over the world and the flash snowstorms in Montana after record high temperatures. Baseball and softball size hail now the norm. The so-called climate science community is paid to pretend the constant catastrophic hail is just a symptom of planetary meltdown. False. It's a glaring consequence of climate engineering and chemical ice nucleation operations. More heat doesn't make more ice. Think about it. From the Jerusalem Post, let's add this. Britain prepares for hostile nations and nation actors to weaponize the sun. From the report, UK is reportedly interested in a risk assessment of technology which could reflect sunlight away from Earth. Let's all just keep pretending it's not raging in our skies. And its potential to manufacture an environmental disaster. Too late, already there. They continue. British ministers have begun preparing for a potential scenario in which hostile nations or actors use sun-dimming technology. You mean like Western nations? Those nations? And I'm not excluding the other nations. They're all a part of it. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org, search massive Senate document, 800 pages long, U.S. Senate document, important sections highlighted, going back to 1978, I believe, outlining the intergovernmental cooperation, even between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations on these programs because of the cross-border ramifications. No matter what surface tensions we see, they are all colluding and cooperating on climate engineering, although now, because of the hostilities, they may be starting to use it against each other, but that cooperation has been there for decades. Documents prove it. And when these organizations, any media source that pretends something might happen someday. It's been raging for decades in our skies. What's wrong with civilization? What's wrong with society? What's wrong with the people around us? What's wrong with our family? What's wrong with our friends? Why can't they see this? Why won't they acknowledge this? Because there's a psychological firewall for existential threats. They simply refuse to acknowledge them. Primitive human firewall. Don't scare me. I can't hear you. And about the air the Brits are breathing, long since laden with toxic climate engineering fallout. With that in mind, from the UK Guardian, this, UK air pollution killing more than 500 people a week, doctors say. That's new. I wonder if anybody's concerned about that, and that's a very conservative estimate. The Royal College of Physicians also says poor air quality costs the country more than 500 million euros a week. 99% of the population is breathing toxic air, doctors have said. No. 100% of global everyone is breathing toxic air. There is nowhere to escape. Many studies have already proven this conclusively. Ubiquitous contamination of planet Earth from many, many sources, of course, countless sources. But when you are intentionally dumping 40 to 60 million tons of toxic climate engineering nanoparticles, a toxic brew, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, graphene, synergistic toxicity that results from all those being combined and everything else industrialized, militarized society is dumping into our skies. That's called a species that doesn't want to live long. And we're about to learn that the hard way. In spite of all that I've discovered, UK ministers are approving more oil drilling operations. Imagine that. From Euronews.com. Banks show true colors with carbon fuel financing surge last year. In total, banks have financed fossil fuels, carbon fuels, to the tune of $6.9 trillion since the Paris Agreement. The whole COP climate conferences all smoke and mirrors. Behind closed doors, those conferences are about forcing countries to actively or passively participate in climate engineering. That's what they're about. Business as usual. Everybody participates in climate engineering. On that note, this from Medium.com, Climate Collapse, the crime of the global elite. Conscious decisions made by a powerful global elite who have built and protected a system rooted in greed, expansion, and short-term profit. Very short-term. Like pirates loading their pockets with loot on the deck of a sinking ship. Massive war glorification parades, even as the planet's life support systems are imploding by the day. Forgive me if I rant for just a moment, then I'll go back to headlines. But these are not faceless forces of fate. They are boardroom executives, oil barons, policymakers, media owners, tech billionaires, and political dynasties. For decades, they've known what the reckless burning of carbon fuels does to the planet and climate engineering. Internal documents from oil corporations as far back as the 70s, they're part of climate engineering, by the way, showed a clear understanding of the link between carbon emissions and the warming of the planet. But instead of acting responsibly, they chose deception, of which climate engineering is a core part. They funded denial campaigns, they bought politicians, they delayed action, and even today, under the guise of progress, they continue to control the narrative, which includes that climate engineering will save us from ourselves when it's doing nothing more than pounding the nails, the final nails, into our collective coffins. These elite actors sit atop the very industries that are destroying the planet. Carbon fuels, industrial agriculture, aviation, which includes climate engineering operations, mining. They champion GDP growth as the sole metric of national success while externalizing the true cost onto forests, rivers, oceans, and entire communities, indeed the entire web of life. A handful of corporations emit more than most countries. In their worldview, even solutions to the climate crisis must be monetized. Carbon credits, green bonds, electric car IPOs. They have turned even the Earth's last cry for help into an opportunity for profit. Disaster capitalists they are. The elite suffer from a chronic disease of insatiability. Nothing is enough for them. Even with all their wealth, they remain poor inwardly. That inward emptiness expresses itself as an endless hunger to possess more, control more, dig more, drill more. The earth is simply collateral damage in their pursuit of a life they can never truly live. And because their power allows them to shape narratives, they convince the world that this endless consumption is development, that to resist is backwardness. When the environmental movements begin to gain momentum, these same elite forces co-opted them, as I already stated in this broadcast. They sponsor climate conferences where private jets line the runways. They fund research that aligns with their interests, like claiming climate engineering is going to save us from ourselves, when in fact it will be, again, the final nails in our collective coffins. They create ESG metrics that they themselves define and manipulate. It's like the arsonist becoming the firefighter. As long as they are in charge of the, quote, solutions, no real solution will ever be allowed to emerge. They will always find ways to delay, distract, and dilute, because true climate action threatens the very foundation of their power. Deindustrialization and the total cessation of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. On the subject of the arsonists pretending to be the firefighters, back home, I'm in the former Golden State of California, former Golden State. From thedailyexpress.com, this is Wildfires as a Weapon. That's where this article falls. And we have a document with that exact title, by the way, from the U.S. military. Wildfires as a Military Weapon. Please search the Engineering Wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more. Here's the headline. 15 California counties to lose power as damaging winds send wildfire risk soaring. From that report, a cool down, mentioned that earlier, right? Going to chemically nucleate moisture flowing into the Pacific Northwest, and that dries up much or all of that moisture, and they need the wind to help facilitate that reaction, to help facilitate the cool down. They manipulate atmospheric pressure zones to gain the zonal wind flow they need, but that will fuel the fire threat. They say a cool down is on the way after a heat wave set temperatures soaring into triple digits across California this week, but the change in weather is bringing a new threat to the Golden State, formerly Golden State. The upcoming weather system is set to bring fierce winds and dry air. Again, the desiccant particles dry up the moisture, creating the perfect conditions for large wildfires. That's what's scheduled. Here's the counties in question: Alameda, Contra Costa, Fresno, Merced, Monterey, San Benito, San Joaquin, San Luis Obispo, Santa Clara, Shasta, my county, also Tehama and Trinity counties. Will this weather warfare scenario provide the power structure another excuse to deploy the U.S. military into urban zones? Time will tell. Let's keep going. From thetimes.com, enemies could weaponize new weather technologies. Really? As if they haven't already. For how long? Let's talk about Iran. Let's talk about the one country on the floor of the UN that clearly hasn't participated in these programs. Iran on the floor of the UN after 9/11, because they are on the list of countries to be targeted, even though they had nothing to do with 9/11, obviously. Obviously, we weren't told the truth in any way, shape, or form about 9/11. But Iran on the floor of the UN, this is on film, on the record, their president stating emphatically NATO was cutting off the precipitation to their country. What happens when you cut off precipitation? You destabilize food supplies, thus you destabilize populations. That's weather warfare. Gee, I wonder why they don't like us. And even then, is there any justification for what's going on right now? I'll get to that. To our U.S. military brothers and sisters, remember the oath you took to protect your fellow Americans from all threats, foreign and domestic, and consider that the propagandists who are pushing the narrative of imminent foreign threats are all too often blatantly lying. Fabricated fictional yarns to whip up public support for the empire's never-ending pursuit of resources and control. How many false flag sagas will it take before Americans wake up and connect the dots? From the U.S. government's facilitation of Pearl Harbor to the fabricated Gulf of Tonkin incident that was used as the premise for the Vietnam War, to the Iraq WMDs that weren't, and now there's the imminent Iran threat that isn't. Question: for exactly how many years has Benjamin Netanyahu insisted that Iran was months away from having nuclear bombs? 29 29 years. Yes, for some 29 years, Netanyahu has been pushing his fabrications in the quest to justify what he's always wanted to do in the first place. And now he's carrying out that quest against a country that has for decades stated on the record it doesn't want nuclear weapons. On that note, from this week, new PBS, America's spies say Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon. They continue, no evidence Iran is actively pursuing nuclear weapons. What a surprise. They've never wanted them. They've always stated so, and they've never invaded another country for 250 years, and whatever else they're involved in, whatever covert things. I'm not saying they're innocent. I'm not agreeing with their culture, their customs, their government. I'm stating facts. And how many countries is our military in all over the world? In everybody's backyard, on their borders, 800 military bases around the world. Who is the antagonist here? And when NATO was cutting off the precipitation of that country, that's weather warfare. And how many decades has that been going on? And by the way, the same power structure cutting off precipitation to agricultural land in the U.S. If you think that those in power care any more about you than they do any other population in any other country anywhere in the world, think again. Time to wake up. They're only being a little more careful because many Americans are still armed, at least for the moment. Yes, the Iraq WMDs that didn't exist. Chapter 2, this time it's Iran. What a surprise. But for Fox News faithful followers, in their world, Iran is sitting on a nuclear bomb arsenal because Fox talking heads say so, right? People like Mark Levine, I can hardly stand to watch that guy. He certainly needs therapy. There's something seriously wrong with him. And by criticizing Fox, am I endorsing other matrix networks? No, of course not. Just stating a fact. All the networks are bad. Some are worse than others, as I just stated. Criticism of one entity is an endorsement of another, though for far too many Americans, dichotomous thought is automatic. You're either on the blue team or the red team. Such thought processes are programmed, and they're wrong. And why am I diving into this? Because it could be World War III, could be planned, could be the very end of the road. It's the same powers, same power structure that is spraying our skies, which I have devoted over 20 years of my life to. Same core of power doing both. Waging conflict, carnage, fermenting it, and waging weather warfare all over the world. Let's add this from ABC News. How Israel's Iran strike might supercharge the global nuclear arms race. Again, that's from ABC News, just quoting a headline. The stated intention of the attacks was to stop Iran from building a bomb. Some experts worry it may have the opposite effect. Let's stop there. Yes, obviously. Of course it will have the opposite effect. How could it not? The preemptive, unbridled aggression that is being carried out only fortifies the fear of countries around the world that if they don't have a nuclear weapon, they can expect to be carpet bombed by the empire sooner or later. And for all those that practice power structure programmed pretend patriotism, while at the same time claiming to be against the weather, chemical, and biological warfare that is raging in our skies, please, again, please wake up. The same matrix manipulators that are carrying out or in countless ways orchestrating conflict and carnage zones around the world are also spraying you like lab rats from our skies. Same core of power. And yes, I said orchestrating conflict and carnage zones, often by covertly organizing and funding the very terrorist organizations they claim to be fighting. Please do objective research, connect the puzzle pieces. Please keep to a correct compass heading and help in the desperate battle to sound the alarm before there's nothing, absolutely nothing left to salvage of our once thriving planet. From the UK Guardian, climate misinformation turning crisis into catastrophe report says, false claims obstructing climate action, say researchers, amid calls for climate lies to be criminalized. Let's start with this. Let's start with the climate lie of the official denial of the climate engineering, aka weather warfare, raging in our skies. That should be the biggest criminalized action of all, should it not? How can we have any legitimate discussion about climate, anything from any perspective, without first and foremost addressing the climate engineering weather warfare elephant in the equation? How much more inarguably clear can that possibly be that the global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare, are the greatest and most immediate threat we collectively face sort of nuclear cataclysm. Numerous online sources, sites, and individuals are suddenly playing the part of pretending they're experts on the subject, though they haven't done a single environmental test, only giving platforms to disinformation sources and claiming that they're filing, for example, FOIA requests, something that any high school student can do, that will yield nothing of value. It won't. We long since learned that the hard way at geoengineeringwatch.org. Some of the most prolific money pandering sources are even filing FOIA requests for the 2 Silicon Valley clowns that launched a few balloons with 10 grams of SO2 on each balloon and pretending they were geoengineering. Really? Never mind the fleets of tanker jets all over the world every single day, some capable of dumping up to 100 tons of toxic nanoparticles in a single payload like a KC-135. No, don't focus on that. Just pretend that the clowns with their balloons matter when they don't. And as I mentioned last week, there is the mass distraction of meaningless local cloud seeding operations like the so-called Rainmaker Company and its 25-year-old CEO that large platforms like Sean Ryan pretended was something more than a mass distraction from the actual weather warfare. An activist just sent to me a photo of this 25-year-old Rainmaker CEO cozily posing with none other than Bill Clinton. Nothing to see here, nothing nefarious going on, right? Just because this 25-year-old Rainmaker disinformation CEO showed up at state legislation hearings to try to expose and stop climate engineering around the country, he showed up to actually deny climate engineering. All just a coincidence, right? And he's put on a major platform as if that's truth. So, are the majority of such sources and sites actually helping the cause of credibly exposing and halting climate engineering operations, or actually harming the cause by combining baseless and discrediting claims with whatever information they put out? On top of it all, many of these same sources are constantly rattling their tin cup, pressuring their followers to give them money for fighting against climate engineering while they're actually denying the cause and harming it. Geoengineering Watch is the only organization we know of that has actually conducted extensive environmental testing, surface and atmospheric, over many years. We've absolutely never pandered for funds from our followers. We never will. We've only asked them to help sound the alarm by sharing credible data from a credible source, which anyone can do for free from their own home computer. Further, Geoengineering Watch doesn't do ads, no outside sponsors. We're not selling anything with the exception of providing full-color printed activist awareness-raising materials, which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. They can be found on our homepage. Question: what source has actually carried out over a decade and a half of testing and research on the climate engineering issue that so many are now so rightly concerned about? What sources are now simply trying to jump on the climate engineering bandwagon because they believe doing so will bring them clicks and donations, while actually pumping out patently false information that completely discredits the climate engineering cause? I'm all for credible help from people that are actually dedicated to the cause. But when it's something less than that, clearly other than that, and the pandering, disinformation, pushing behavior affects the cause on which all of our collective futures completely and totally depend, I have a problem with that. The following are a few examples of what is put out by sources like those I just described. False claims like climate engineering is the only problem with the climate. False. Claims like the massive plumes of jet dispersions we see are from jet additives, aka it's just jet exhaust. Patently false. If tens of millions of tons of toxic abrasive particles were being run through jet turbines, the aircraft would be falling out of our skies moments after takeoff due to the engines failing. Think about it. Air traffic is always directed around ash clouds for this exact reason. Here's a footnote posted at geoengineeringwatch.org a few days ago. Climate engineering nanoparticles in our atmosphere. Lab testing confirmed. See my exchange with a top global scientist. Atmospheric testing that we paid for at the cost of 6 figures with a NOAA flying lab, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and we found engineered particles. That is not jet exhaust. That very short video, I think with about 250,000 views already on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Please view it, share it, help us to spread truth, not disinformation. Further, dispersions are routinely seen being turned on and off. Are the engines being turned on and off? Obviously not. And no, such observations are not the result of atmospheric layering. The atmosphere layers horizontally, not vertically. In so many regions, there can be grid patterns one day and nothing the next. Not just a lack of jet dispersions on some days, but no jets at all on some days. Imagine that. Happens in my airspace all the time. When there's not dispersions going on, we have no traffic over our region. Yet the "it's just jet exhaust" lie continues, even from presidential administrations past and present. There's more. Claims like the planet isn't warming. False. It's spiraling into total meltdown. Geoengineering operations are making it worse overall, not better. Claims like we're entering an ice age. Not just wrong, but mind-numbingly absurd. Claims like there isn't any problem with industrialized, militarized so-called civilization and the over 8 billion humans that are actively or passively supporting the loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute paradigm until nothing is left because, so say the sites and sources and individuals in question, the world's population could all fit in the state of Texas and still have some elbow room left. Truly, it's hard to find the words to adequately describe just how baseless and ignorant such a conclusion is, pushing the conclusion that there is no existential threat from humans and human activity, completely overrunning and decimating the planet because we could all fit in the state of Texas. Please stop, remember, and consider. It's not about elbow room. It's about resources and functional planetary life support systems, which climate engineering is decimating along with countless other forms of destructive human activities. Those that truly want to help in this most critical battle to credibly expose and halt climate engineering operations will take every effort to share credible data from a credible source. Anything less is to undermine the very cause on which all of our lives most completely depend. And when you see sources and sites spewing out disinformation while pretending to be fighting against climate engineering and pandering for your financial support at the same time, call them out publicly, hold them accountable. Moving on, planetary meltdown and unfolding global ecological collapse, further fueled by weather warfare. From the World Meteorological Organization, global climate predictions show temperatures expected to remain at or near record levels in the coming 5 years. It's only going to go one way, and that's up. If you think climate and environmental conditions are bad now, you won't like what the coming weeks and months bring. And on top of it all, the global controllers are pushing forward toward ever more expansive global conflict and carnage zones. When will the nuclear card be played? And how many are aware of the fact that some circles in Washington have openly discussed what they perceive as a benefit of nuclear exchange in order to put enough particulate matter into Earth's skies to slow the runaway climate collapse that's unfolding by the day? If they do this, if this takes place, a nuclear exchange on any scale, the ionizing radiation will strip away what little is left of Earth's climate engineering damaged ozone layer. Game over. Search, again, the ozone destruction section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org if you're willing to face a deep dose of truth that no other sources are disclosing. The only way we will have any chance of altering the unfolding nightmare is to first fully face it. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 515, June 21st, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations known as geoengineering. Going to skip the rest of this announcement. I'm already almost out of time because there's so much to cover and not enough time to cover it, but please check the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn how you can help to move this fight forward. Our high-quality printed materials that we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping, those are extremely effective keys to the door in regard to waking others up. Please help us to sound the alarm. Make your voice heard while it can still make a difference. Moving on, before I run out of time, from Bloomberg, New York City and the U.S. Northeast will shift to searing heat after weeks of rain and clouds as record-breaking temperatures descend on the region. More than 200 daily and overnight records are poised to be broken from Sunday to Tuesday across a wide swath of the country from Chicago to New York. They're dropping the constant manipulated moisture flows and chemical ice nucleation in exchange for a high-pressure heat dome. Weather and temperature whiplash. The environment, the web of life can't take this much longer. It's getting worse with each cycle that they create. When will the population wake up, look up, stand up, and face the truth? From USA Today, heat dome incoming, scorching temperatures in the forecast to kick off summer. They say just in time for the start of summer on June 20th. Is that just a coincidence? No, it's a game to them. It's a game. They're laughing it up behind closed doors, drinking martinis, and waiting to head into their bunkers. Don't believe it? You think that's just a metaphor? No. According to Weather Prediction Center, the heat wave will begin Friday, June 20th. It's all the scheduled weather, okay? They can produce it over whatever regions they want. The center is warning that a rare, quote, high risk of extreme heat is anticipated early next week across portions of the country. Again, we have also the wet bulb temperatures. That's the heat index because the humidity is climbing also. That's exactly what happens to a damaged planet as well. Body can't cool itself when the humidity climbs with the temperatures, and that's exactly what's happening. It's already intolerable to the human body in many places around the globe. People trying to hide indoors as long as they can. That won't continue for much longer. From CNN, children born now may live in a world where the U.S. can only produce half as much of its key food crops. Wow, what a pack of lies this is. Not that it's not that bad. It's exponentially worse. They say rising global temperatures are set to devastate food crops across the world. That's right now. That's right now. With particularly alarming impacts predicted for the United States, where production of key crops could plummet by 50% by the end of the century. Are they serious? On the current trajectory, there will likely be few, if any, left by the end of the decade. Do the math. Insect populations down 90% now. Plankton populations down 90% now in many parts of the world's oceans. Wildlife populations have plummeted 75% in 40 years alone. Fisheries collapsed by 90% right now today. Crops are collapsing. They're saying by the end of the century, this is pacification, public pacification to keep the public asleep at the wheel until the moment of impact. From America.cgtn.com, Mexico's food supply at risk from extreme weather. That's right now today. From extremetemps.com, historic heat wave in China. Hundreds of records keep falling. From Bloomberg, Japan issues multiple heat alerts amid soaring temperatures. From the UK Guardian, NASA data reveals dramatic rise in intensity of weather events. That's an understatement. Extreme events such as floods, droughts are becoming more frequent, longer lasting, more severe, study says. Don't need a group of scientists to tell us that. It's twice as much. It's now twice as much as the 2003 to 2020 average. That's called an exponential equation. We are so close to hitting the wall. They say the world isn't prepared for the changes in intense rainfall and drought that are now occurring. Understatement. Empty shelves coming. They say this could have widespread effects across entire economies. Economies? People won't care about economies. They won't care about their portfolio. They're going to care about their next bite of food and their next drink of water. And to watch Matrix Media, you'd never know any of this is going on with the mind-numbingly low IQ commercials they have. 2/3 of them for pharmaceuticals, where people are dancing around singing while they're reading out the list of consequences for taking the big pharma concoction, every possible consequence you could imagine, and then people are dancing around singing. If there was some outside intelligence from some other part of the universe watching the human race right now, I'm quite sure that they would be sure we're not worth saving. We've lost our minds. From the Washington Post, Canada's forests may be burning faster than they can grow back. Understatement, they're not growing back, period. That solves that equation, doesn't it? From mongabay.com, wildfires push tropical forest loss in Latin America to record highs all over the world. Same thing happening. MSN, the decline of the Colorado River and its impact on millions. About 40 million in the Southwest are about to find out the hard way what happens when you destroy the climate system. Climate engineering being at the top of that equation. But hey, this will fix it. From multiple sources, bank unveils green loans plan to unlock trillions for climate finance, like the trillions that have long since been dumped into climate engineering. That kind of disaster capitalism, how's that going so far as we circle the drain, all of us? A few more meltdown headlines from Fox Weather. Alaska's first ever heat advisory issued as Fairbanks sees temperatures soar. Hey, don't worry, just go to Montana. You can go into a snowstorm. Don't worry about if it's melting down in the Arctic. From USA Today, historic heat advisories issued in Alaska. What's going on? Question mark. Meltdown and climate engineering. That's what's going on. From Yahoo News, Alaska hits shocking heat record as dangerous phenomena accelerates. Those temperatures could feel like 110. That's the heat index temperature of 110 in Alaska, and it's snowing in Montana. From the Washington Post, a rare severe thunderstorm hits Juneau, Alaska on Monday. The storm prompted the first ever severe thunderstorm warning. Imagine that. From extremetemps.com, unbelievable world climate history rewritten, nearly 53 degrees on an island. That's 127 degrees on an island in the middle of the ocean off the coast of Kuwait. Think about that. I wonder what the heat index was, 150, 160? There's more from MSN. Iceland and Greenland just shattered heat records, and it's terrifying. That's the headline. From bridgedetroit.com, the smoke from Canada's wildfires may be even more toxic than usual. I wonder why. Couldn't be that blanket geoengineering spray dispersions going on over the smoke canopy, could it? We captured that over the Paradise Fire. View that in the dimming documentary available for free on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. From IQAir.com, Europe air quality alert. Canadian wildfire smoke all the way in Europe. Imagine that. From multiple sources, tornado count more than doubles in Canada over the last decade. That's because when you chemically nucleate atmospheric moisture, you create a cold, dense layer of air in the ground. When you collide that cold, dense layer with manipulated flows of warm moisture, you destabilize the atmosphere and you get cyclonic rotations. From extremetemps.com, hot, cold, snow, floods, and hot again. That's in Namibia. Back, forth, chemically nucleation, high-pressure heat domes. Translation, weather, warfare. Here's my question. How many are willing to stand and be counted? How many are willing to make their voices heard in this final hour fight for life on Earth? Literally. How many are willing to stand against the programmed resistance of the herd? Definition, herd mentality, also known as herd behavior, describes the tendency for individuals to conform to the actions and beliefs of a group, often at the expense of their own independent judgment. This can lead to individuals making decisions or holding opinions simply because they see others doing the same, rather than through their own critical thinking. As the proverb goes, he who is not angered at injustice is himself unjust. If you listen to this broadcast, if you suffered through the rantings of this weary soul that has slogged forward in this fight for over 27 years non-stop, then you clearly care, and I'm deeply honored to stand with you. Let's keep sounding the alarm no matter what comes. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Make your voice heard, make every single day count. All is in the balance, literally. Stay strong. Never yield to the fading of the light, ever. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.